welcome everybody on this Wednesday evening. I hope you've all had a good day, and thank you for giving some time to come and explore this topic of partnering and engaging and connecting with our local communities. So this is the third in our series of ReNew, fourth series of ReNew webinars. And we've found that we've kind of touched all sorts of different topics broadly relating to children and young people. And when we've recorded them, and a lot of people are watching the recordings as well. So we've got a whole menu of all sorts of different topics that come under the ReNew umbrella on the Church of Scotland YouTube channel. And so we'll record this and share this afterwards. But I'm delighted that we've got 4 key contributors to share some really wonderful stories and examples of ways that they are connecting with the community, ways that they kind of maybe started, and ways that they've succeeded, and where that's been easy, where that's been challenging and hard. And I'm sure that the rest of you have got other examples of things that your church may have been doing to connect and engage with the community. But I think it's a key thing that we need to be doing, particularly as we reach out to children, young people, and their families, reaching out beyond the church, maybe beyond Sunday services, and seeking to build fresh relationships outside the church building itself. So I'm sure the examples we have tonight will give us some really good things to think about and to explore. So let me just start with an opening prayer. Loving Lord, we come to you this evening, thanking you for the opportunity to meet together, to explore how we can reach out, connect, and partner with others in our communities and connect with our children and young people and their families and their lives. Help us to bring your kingdom in our communities and in our world. Help us as we seek to transform, revive, and heal society. We ask that you take us and you use us, that you speak to us in this evening, and that you continue to work in us and through us to our wider world and our local communities. In Jesus' name, amen. I wonder if you could all just open your chat and just note down, what are the labels that we put when we think about young people? How do we label or speak about or even think about young people, children, young people? What might the labels we put? The stereotypes that there may be. Great, difficult, entitled, cheeky. Ooh, a disturbance. Be quiet, sit still. Complex, interesting. Gen Z, thank you. Energetic, a blessing. I'm trying to read these for the recording. Exciting, potential, inspiring, a joy to be around. So yes, as we think of labels, they're positive and they're sometimes negative labels, creative and enthusiastic. And I want to just share my screen, and we're going to watch a short video about the labels that we can often think about or put upon children and young people. So that's quite a powerful little video. I think there's labels that we put on people, but there's also labels that they put on themselves and we all carry around. How can we put on that label of being loved, and how might that bring that transformation and heal our society as we explore how we can really change those labels and those perceptions. So tonight's session is maybe looking at how we can help people across our communities to feel loved, to live their lives in that identity of being loved, under that label of being loved, and how that, and loved by God, loved by the church, how that can transform the lives of young people and their families in our local communities. So we'll hear some stories tonight on what some people are doing and how they're trying to connect and share that label of love with young people. And we'd love to hear more later on about what each of you might be doing across your communities to put that label of love, to express that love of God across our communities. We're wanting to explore ideas for reaching out that are tangible, innovative, and coming from a place of faith. How, as we go out from our church buildings, can we connect with schools, with young people and their families? How can we really start to make a difference in our communities? So, Joe, I'm going to invite you to pick up now and lead us on. I'm just going to spotlight you.
That's always weird when I can now on my second screen see myself spotlighted. So my name's Joe. I am based in Stirling. I work for an organisation called TLG, Transforming Lives for Good. We are a charity that is 25 years old this year. But I would suspect that a number of you in this room, some of you have heard of us. I've connected with some of you before. But many of you, I think, will not have heard of TLG before. But we are actively working across in different communities and supporting the local churches in parts of Scotland. And so just as I start to share about two of the programs that you as churches, as your churches could get involved in with us, I just want to follow what Isabel just said, that very much we are wanting to hopefully inspire you this evening. You know, I'm sure that as you drive through or walk through or cycle through your local communities where you're based. And I think it's incredible that we've got, you know, people tonight from Orkney all the way down to the borders, you know, represented here. And our communities will look different in some ways, but what will be absolutely common to each of those communities is that there are children and young people and families who just now are finding life difficult, who are perhaps lacking in hope, who are struggling for a variety of reasons, whether that be the cost of living crisis, whether that be unemployment, maybe bereavement, maybe illness, a whole variety of reasons. And yet we as the church have the power within our fingertips to unlock some of that potential, some of that creativity. We have the opportunity to stand in the gap at a time when actually at governmental level, at council level, so many different organisations and programmes are having to close because of lack of finance, because of lack of resource. And I think that as the church, you are an untapped treasure, an untapped resource. You've got people in your congregations who have the opportunity to stand in that gap for a young person. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to share a little bit about our two programmes, and then I'm going to pass on after that to Stewart, who's going to share a little bit about his programme, and then to Gayle just after. No sound with any of the stuff that I am sharing, so it should happen pretty seamlessly, I hope. We'll see. Let me just share my screen. So I hope you can all see my slide on my screen just now. I can still see all of you as well, which is brilliant. Thanks, Stuart. I see you nodding your head. That's brilliant. So for the first part of this evening, I'm going to share about our early intervention programme. Early intervention is a school-based mentoring programme. So this is a way for you as the local church to really practically and really tangibly support children in the school day. Okay, so I know that many of you are probably already doing things like chaplaincy, and you're maybe getting the chance to go in and lead assemblies, maybe bring some of the children or to your churches, maybe for at Easter, at Christmas, at festival times. You're getting the chance to engage with them on that level. Perhaps some of you are maybe even or know of people in your congregations who do like a paired reading program, or just volunteer. Maybe some of the parents volunteer to help within the life of the school. But this is a program that allows a little bit more support to be brought in. The whole premise of early intervention coaching is that it is not counselling. It fits in terms of the Scottish Government statistics and aims and goals to try and mitigate against some of the crisis that we're seeing, particularly in teenagers and sort of the upper 18 to 25 age group. To try and mitigate some of that is to try and bring in some more earlier interventions like early intervention mentoring. It's where one trained coach would spend 1 hour a week with one child in the school day over the course of a year, an academic year. And I want to tell you the story tonight of one of our coaches from Dunfermline. So we have a centre, a partnership with Liberty Church in Fife, and they have been partnered with TLG and running early intervention for about 7 years now. So they started pre-pandemic. They were able to adapt things, and still with under really good safeguarding, etc., we're able to continue connection during COVID as well. And they are a very flourishing team. There are currently 9 coaches meeting with 9 different children each week in one local primary school in Dunfermline at St Leonard's Primary. One of the coaches has actually shared with me before that she believes that early intervention offers the opportunity to be a positive influence in a child's life without requiring any particular skills or experience. So it's suitable for anyone with a heart for supporting children or supporting vulnerable children. TLG as an organisation, when a church partners with us, we train the individuals, we train, we support, we equip in an ongoing way. So there's nothing that you have to come up with. All you need is a willingness to be involved. And you'll see that I've also got on this screen the 4 key coaching relationships that you and your pupil is obviously at the centre of, but we as an organisation seek to enable the church to connect with the coach child, to connect with the school in a really tangible way, but also to connect with home. So there's other mentoring programs out there happening. Often they are based in terms of in Scotland in a secondary setting, but none of those mentoring programs are doing that additional element of trying to connect with the family as well. And as you guys know, the challenges that are faced, if you have an hour a week with a young person in school, it's going to make a difference. But if you can also build a relationship with that family, if you can be signposting and offering some support as the wider church, what a long-term difference you can actually see being made. So I'll put some images on the screen, and as I read this story to you, hopefully this will be clear why. This story of early intervention coaching started a few years ago, but it continues to this day. I'll call the boy David. Mum can be mum. The family had been relocated from another part of the UK due to traumatic circumstances. Mum and 6 children, who at the time were aged 9 to their teens. David was the youngest. He was in primary 5 when I met him. He was my first coaching experience. David was disengaged from learning and often spent time outside of the classroom or in the nurture hub. He wasn't particularly interested when I told him about the coaching program, but he didn't say no. For the first month of coaching, I turned up at school at the time that we'd agreed for our coaching sessions, and David sat under a table in the open area outside the classroom. He wore a big hoodie with the hood up and he huddled into it. I asked if I could join him. He said nothing. I sat on the floor beside his table. I chatted about this and that. He said nothing. By week 3, I asked if I could join him, and he looked at me and moved to make space under the table. One of the things I did each week was play solitaire with cards. I knew that David was watching me all the time. I deliberately started making mistakes. I knew that was getting to him. By week 4, he couldn't take it any longer. I had messed up the game yet again when he exclaimed, "Pat, you're doing it wrong. It'll never work out. I'll show you." Breakthrough moment. Coaching grew slowly from there, and David began to engage. He didn't chat much, but sometimes would answer questions. He was happier to talk about our activities. We did rock painting, woodwork, clay name plaques, and made an advent tree. Gradually, we were able to talk about thoughts and feelings. Early on in our coaching, I met his mum for a cuppa. She'd actually visited our church at one point through different connections. As you'll know, God always goes before. We hit it off right from the start. It was obvious to me that this was a loving mum, resilient through awful circumstances, who would do all she could for her children. She was intelligent, capable, and insightful, but overwhelmed by financial worries, behavioural difficulties of her children, and life in general. For her and her children, life held a lot of darkness, stuff that I as a coach couldn't fix. But I could listen and be really present as she shared. I could give her time and space and value. I could pray about the things she shared. Our relationship grew. David, Mum and I walked our dogs together. I helped out in practical ways where I could, as did other members of the church. Over the years, we have provided sofas, moved them in and out, lifted carpets, provided transport, visited in hospital, provided support in various meetings, celebrated birthdays, and other significant events. Last year, I took one of her sons and his partner to hospital when she was in labour. Trust is a big deal for a family this damaged, and I count it a privilege to have been admitted to their inner circle. Our early intervention coaching ended almost 4 years ago now. David's now in 3rd year in secondary school. We still meet at least once a term. We go to a fast food establishment of his choice and we chat. His mum is my friend. Her life circumstances and my life circumstances are not equal, but she is my equal. Relationships that can develop with those we support in any ministry are often just pinpricks of light in their darkness. But pinpricks of light do make a difference. Some hope, some encouragement, a lifting of the heaviness, knowing that they are not alone. In some training we did once, TLG was described as the ministry of showing up. I like that. We can show faithfulness, stability, and consistency to those who don't have that in their lives. We can show up and make others available to God, believing that He will use us. Are this family regularly in church yet? No. Do they know about Jesus? Yes. And Mum knows that she and her family are held up in prayer by those who care about her. And that matters a lot to her. And actually, that mum will, she's part of a little prayer chain, and she will send little requests in to that team of ladies from Liberty Church in Dunfermline to ask for little things to be shared. So that's a little bit about our early intervention and the opportunity that that could provide you with as a church to really stand in the gap, to have people volunteering, going into school, but connecting with families that otherwise you perhaps are not managing to connect with in your communities. And then we have our second programme, Make Lunch. We have a Make Lunch project that just launched in Shadoxley Baptist last summer in Aberdeen. Kirsty Argyle is our coordinator there, and the head teacher of the primary school. So when they first went to the primary school last year to suggest that they were going to run Make Lunch, which is essentially a holiday club that happens during the holiday periods, where there's a hot meal provided for the children and for the families if the families come along as well, where they do some fun games and activities. And the head teacher has shared with Kirsty, I've been seeing and hearing great things about the Make Lunch food initiative you ran over the summer. Thank you for providing the support for our community. So these two initiatives can really help you as the church build really credible, trustworthy, sustainable and tangible relationships with schools in your community. Kirsty sent me some pictures. This is just of their Easter Make Lunch programs that they have just ran. They ran 4 sessions over the 2-week holiday period of Make Lunch. I love these pictures because they really capture some of the joy, some of the fun. They hold their Make Lunch Club in the church building. They have a really brilliant kind of sanctuary space that you can see in the bottom photograph. But they also have a fantastic kind of kitchen and cafe area just outside. We have Make Lunch clubs, though, that run in schools during the holiday period, that run in other community halls or the church building. It really can be flexed and adapted for what suits your circumstances. You'll see Jane and the team dishing out the macaroni and cheese, which I'm told is one of the children's absolute favourites. So they're getting a really hot, healthy meal. You'll see, even in the photographs, the various age ranges of the volunteers. This is not just for some people who are young and sprightly or have retired and have loads of time. This is the kind of programme that so many different people of ages and stages across the life of your churches could get involved in. And as I listened actually to their Sunday service a couple of weeks ago, and they had some of their volunteers share about what it meant to them to be involved in Make Lunch. And one of the volunteers was in her 70s, and one of the volunteers was in her early 20s, both who shared very different stages in life. And they both, what they have in common is the fact that they celebrated the joy and the fun, the energy that the children brought. A highlight for Annette, one of the volunteers, was seeing the joy on the children's faces as they arrived, to know that they're leaving then physically fed, but also feeling valued, loved, and cared for. The other volunteer, Naomi, shared that building relationship through craft and eating together, talking to the children and getting to know them better, was a real special moment for her over that 2-week period. And so Make Lunch can be about bringing the community into your church building in a way that maybe isn't currently happening. I love this picture of the Make Lunch team from Shadoxley because it captures the different ages and stages, the real diversity of this team. There's a space for lots of people to get involved. It's a great way to help children in the community, but also to help provide for the needs of the families. In creating a safe and welcoming environment, we are able to plant seeds of faith in their lives. Kirsty at Shaddoxley has taken the opportunity in her Make Lunch Club to share some of the hope and joy and messages of truth from the Bible. They focused on the Easter story as part of theirs. They had a kind of theme song, if you like, that actually meant that the children ended up shouting in the song, Jesus is alive. We can sow those seeds of truth, but equally, Make Lunch doesn't have to necessarily have a faith element like that. Just the fact that you as the church could be opening your door and meeting a need in such a practical, tangible way, getting to know families, journeying with them, listening, understanding, that's the relationship building and the seed being sown. Kirsty shares, this is quite a long one, but I think it's a good one. They've been running Make Lunch at Shaddoxley for almost a year. It's been a privilege to be able to feed the local children. Many of the parents regularly mention how much it's needed and how thankful they are for the support. Just over the last 2 holiday weeks, they've seen 25 to 30 children come through the church doors to receive a freshly hot cooked meal who might not receive a meal that day otherwise. It's an amazing opportunity to create a safe, warm space for children in our community. We now have families who come along to Make Lunch, coming along to church on Sundays and connecting with us as a church. I spoke to Kirsty actually just yesterday. Each of those 25 to 30 children are children that never had any connection to their church previously. That's sort of 20 families, she reckoned, when she did a kind of rough count, because there's some siblings. And there are now 4 of those families coming to their church on a regular basis because of their engagement with Make Lunch. That's the power that that can have. Before I hand over, I've got my details on the screen and we can put those up later. Obviously, I've tried to give you like a real inspirational kind of snapshot of how early intervention and Make Lunch could work and are working in communities across Scotland. I've not really gone into like what partnership looks like because I thought that would be a little bit dull for this evening. But if you do want to find out more and your church would love to explore and find out more about TLG and get to know us as an organisation, please do either check out our website or get in touch with me directly and we can share that information a little bit later on as well. I really hope there's a sense of you feeling, do you know what, these are tangible things that we could take on. We want to support you to be able to bring this support and impact in your communities. Isabel, do you want me to hand straight over to Stewart or do you want to do a little?
Over to you, Stewart. Great.
Hi, everyone. My name's Stewart. I'm the minister at St Ninians Church in Stonehouse, which is it's either a large village or a small town. I'm not entirely sure. People who live here call it a village, but I think it's probably bigger than that now. There are about 6,000 people who live in our town. And that means that there are 2 primary schools. And I get to be the chaplain to both of them, which involves most of the normal chaplaincy things that you might all have come across before. They do assemblies, they come to the church at kind of festivals and all that kind of stuff. But we do some other things. One of the my favourite things that Jesus says to people is, what do you need? He doesn't tend to assume what people want or what they need. And so that's been my approach to working with the schools. I ask them, what do you need? Rather than assuming that I might bring a certain range of skills. And one of the most interesting responses to that was, you ride a bike, don't you? And the answer was, yes, I do. Would you like to help with bikeability? Now, most of you probably know that as cycling proficiency, where you got a little green triangular badge for being able to ride your bike. And to be able to do this for me is a really important thing because for me, it's about 2 things. It's about building relationships with the children that do the class. So we get eight weeks, I think it is, 1 hour a week, never in the summer term. It's always in the cold and in the wet, which is always fun, with the primary 6 class and their teacher. And what it's meant is that we've been able to have more children do bikeability than would have been able to before. It means that we can split into groups, and it means that we can do more stuff. Now, that's all great in terms of bikeability. It means that kids can get out and ride their bikes with a bit more confidence. That's fabulous. But for me, it's all about spending time with those children. I wouldn't ever get to spend an hour a week for 8 weeks with that class. There's no way that would happen. And so what it means is that once we're finished and I see them out riding their bikes in the community, I can say hello and they know who I am. And it's another way of building relationships. It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed it. This is the third lot of kids that we've kind of got. So I started just after lockdown. And for me, it's really important. And one of the kind of troubling stats about childhood these days is about kids don't go out to play, at least not nearly as much as they used to, and they don't go far when they do go out to play. And one of the ways that they might be able to go a little bit further is if they've got a bike and they're allowed out on their bike and their families are confident that they will be safe, because we all worry that our kids will go out on their bikes and they won't be safe. So bikeability is one of those things that helps folk to feel confident, not just the children, but also their parents, about them being able to be out on their bikes and to know how to stay safe. So that's one of the things that we do. The other is taking kids. Stonehouse Primary have a relationship with an organisation called the Jubilee Club. So the Jubilee Club is a dementia club that's focused on music, and it happens in our community centre, the Lifestyle Centre it's called. And the Lifestyle Centre is about a 15-20 minute walk from the school. And so if we're going to go and visit the Jubilee Club, then somebody has to help to walk the kids up to the Jubilee Club. So I get to do that. And again, it's another opportunity to walk with the kids and to talk and to hear all their stories on the way there. And then they sing and I get to join in and we do silly actions and they make fun of me, and that makes them feel a bit more confident about themselves. But they also get to talk to the people who are at the Jubilee Club. So they get to encounter people who live with dementia in a really positive environment, which I think is a brilliant thing, because for lots of people, the only experience they might have of someone who lives with dementia is perhaps a grandparent. And that can be a really scary thing for a child when a grandparent starts to forget and might behave erratically. So it's a really positive way for children to learn about dementia and to learn about the people who live with it and how to care for them well, but also to do something really positive for them and to be able to cheer people up, which is a great thing. But it's also a confidence thing for them too, isn't it? It's about, we can stand in front of people and we can do some things. We can play games, we can sing and all that kind of stuff. The very first time I went to the Jubilee Club with the school was the day before lockdown. And we were on the news. They started, somebody from STV came and interviewed some people at the Dementia Club because lockdown was about to happen, and they were asking, well, what are you going to do? Because these kinds of community organisations are a lifeline for people, who, especially people who don't get out very much and people who find it difficult to get support. So we were on the telly the day before lockdown, which was exciting for all the kids, not so much for me, because I was doing actions to something, I think, in the clip that I was in. So that was always good. And I suppose the other thing I wanted to talk about was that we do lots of the things that everybody does. We have Messy Church and we have Sunday School and Boys Brigade and Girls Brigade. And these are all brilliant and they're really, really helpful and successful, and they do all the things that we would expect them to do. But we go all in at Christmas. And I mean all in. We do all the things in December. And it starts with the Christmas light switch on. So we host the Christmas light switch on in the village. And so we work with the council and with the police and with a couple of other local organisations, including the two schools, who come and sing some Christmas carols on the back of a lorry with some lights and some speakers, and all that kind of stuff. And we get everybody to join in, and the Girls Brigade make hot chocolate, and we just have a great time for half an hour, 45 minutes. And then the Gala Queen gets to switch on the Christmas lights. And it's really straightforward. It's not a difficult thing to do. We speak to one of our local businesses and they provide us with a lorry that's got a curtain side and some stairs. We get some speakers from someone else. We plug that in at the men's shed, which is behind the car park at the co-op. And, so we work together with a lot of different organisations. And as I said, the school come along and the Gala Queen gets to do something else apart from being the Gala Queen. So she gets to switch on the Christmas lights, which is met with varying degrees of horror for most of them because they have to stand in front of everybody and press a magic button. So that's always good. But we also we recognise that to go to see Santa costs a fortune. It's about 20 or 30 pounds per child to go and see Santa at a garden centre around here. And so we have Santa for free. So Santa comes to visit us for 4 hours on a Saturday, kind of from 10 till 2. And everybody gets to see Santa for free and gets a gift from Santa for nothing. But it runs a bit like Messy Church. So we have crafts and some games. And so kids can make Christmas cards, they can make decorations, they can do all that kind of stuff. And we also give people food. So people can have lunch or a cup of coffee or whatever it is that they want. And what we've found over the years of doing that is that people stay for longer and longer and longer each time. So people turn up at 10 o'clock and they don't go home until they get thrown out at 2 o'clock, even though they saw Santa, 3 hours ago. They'd like to stay around and they like to take part in the activities and they like just to be in the church hall and with other people. And every year we see lots of people that we never see at any other time. So it's a fantastic act of hospitality, I think, to be able to do that for our families. And then we invite them to a Christmas movie. So we get a big screen, popcorn, hot dogs, all the stuff, and we show a Christmas movie for free. And again, there's kind of an opportunity. Kids come in their Christmas onesies and all that kind of stuff, and we have a great time. And then usually a couple of days before Christmas, we have a Christmas story. So Santa comes again, but in the evening, so usually just maybe the 23rd, and Santa tells the kids a bedtime story, and then we have cookies and hot chocolate, and it's just wonderful. It's one of my favourite things. I really love it. It's great. And then we have Christmas services. So we have a family service that has a local silver band come and play for us. And what we see is that throughout the month, families come back to things. So they come to Santa at the beginning of the month, and then they come back to the Christmas movie, and then they come to bedtime story, and then they turn up at the Christmas service on Christmas Eve. And they've never done that before. And what we've noticed this year is that some of those families have hung around. They've either got involved in what we do on a Sunday or in our Messy Church. And this year we've baptised 4 children who turned up to see Santa. So, it's just an amazing thing to do. And it seems so simple and kind of straightforward and not really connected really to what we do in church. But it's just this act of hospitality that people really appreciate and then realise that the church isn't a scary place, that we're not all odd, all of us anyway, and that it's a place that they can be and that they can belong. And some of that's about the relationship that we've already built with the schools. So the children know who we are. And so when they turn up to see Santa, they say, "Oh, there's Stewart. I know who he is. He comes to my school." And I think we underestimate that sometimes, that kind of relationship. And the final thing we do at Christmas is that we work with the schools to identify families that need a bit of support in terms of food, but also in terms of presents. And so for the last few years, we always have a kind of extra Christmas food bank where we give out lots of Christmas goodies and vouchers for the local butcher and things like that so that people can get Christmas food. As well as the kind of usual food bank type things. But we've also been collecting and distributing gifts as part of that for the last few years. And that's gone really, really well. And people in the community are unbelievably generous. We've had local businesses who have donated thousands of pounds to that because they want to help. and sometimes it's just about inviting people and giving them an opportunity to get involved. And again, it's something that takes a bit of organising. It's not straightforward. And we give presents to everybody in the household. So all the children in the household, no matter what age they are, so they all get something. And it's something that it only costs us time, and energy, and it makes such a difference, in all kinds of ways, across the year. And it allows us just to show people that they're loved and cared for, and that lots of people love them and care for them. So it's people know that lots of people take part, and it's not just a few people; it's a whole community's worth of people, who care about them. So those are some of the things that we get involved in. The final things are really, it's a really kind of school type thing. At one of the primary schools, I had a conversation with a teacher, who was telling me that she was about to do the Christian stories bit of the curriculum with her primary twos, and that she wasn't very confident about it. And so she said, "Could you come in and do like an hour and tell some stories?" And I said, "So how long does this bit last?" And she said, "Well, usually kind of 6 weeks." And I said, "Why don't I come in every week for 6 weeks and do some stuff?" And she said, "Would that be okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course that would be okay." So I got to spend 6 weeks with the primary twos, telling them Bible stories and doing some activities. And we've got all that stuff already. I didn't have to reinvent anything. I just had to find the appropriate things. But again, another brilliant opportunity to go and be with the children in our community in a different space. And again, so that when they come back to something like our Christian Aid Carol concert, they know who I am, and they know who people from the church are. So some really simple things, but really just saying yes to people. And whenever the schools ask me to do something, and I noticed that Jane's here, she's one of the deputy heads at one of the schools, so don't tell her, but I usually say yes to almost everything they ask. And it's a deliberate policy. If the school asks me to do something, I try my very best to say yes, no matter what it is, because they need what they need, and sometimes they don't have other people to help. So
Some great examples there. Thank you so much, Stuart. Wonderful. Building relationship, reaching out, connecting to people. Jane's noted and is about to ask you far more things to fit into your busy life. Right, I'd like to invite Gayle now just to share some of her story in Newbattle of connecting and engaging with community. Thank you, Gayle.
Hi, my name's Gayle Taylor, and I'm the transition minister in Newbattle Parish, which was the largest parish in the former Lothian Presbytery, but now it's Lothian and Borders, so we're still pretty big. But I suppose listening to Stewart, in my previous church, I was the Associate Minister for Children and Young People, and was fortunate to be in a place where there was that great tradition of relationships, partnership working in the community, and the church had a good reputation in the schools. So I've always done school chaplaincy. That's kind of my bread and butter. I'm also a counsellor, so I've worked with Place to Be, and I do Seasons for Growth in schools, and I've always offered those kind of things. But when I came to Newbattle, as a transition minister, I'm coming to the end of 5 years being with them to take them through some big changes. And I suppose I was invited to speak at the Intergenerational Church conference, which I think Isabel was at a few months ago, because what was very different for me going to Newbattle is that it was a parish and a church where they had no young people. And all of those things that Stuart's just talked about, like Boys Brigade and things, were all distant memories. They'd all folded, and there had been different reasons for that, but maybe part of it was that 3 churches had come together. People had been quite territorial. They hadn't, done work throughout the whole parish. They'd just done their bit in their small corner. And there wasn't a good reputation in the schools. And so the word safe has been used quite a lot tonight about, creating safe spaces for working with young people. But sometimes, as Stuart said, it's about building up the reputation that the church is not full of people who are Bible bashers or weirdos or people that are not safe, and that can be quite hard when you've not had that hard fought pattern of weaving together church into community and all of that. So to build that back up where there's maybe been a long-term vacancy or a deterioration in church life for different reasons. We've got a lot of issues around buildings, a lot of issues around governance. We had a lot of issues around staffing and resourcing, and the church that has stayed open since the pandemic out of our 3 sites is in an area of multiple deprivation. It's a really difficult area to work in, and the needs, Stewart talks about needs there, are multi, that they're across all different age groups, but also when we talk about engaging with young people, it's very complex. Somebody put that word up in the chat, and so the church in Newbattle, we're saying we don't have any young people, and we've got a very elderly congregation who don't have the energy and think that they don't have the resources to be able to do work with young people. But what we encountered coming out of the pandemic was a very, very bad spell of vandalism, where the church was graffitied with some horrendous unpleasant words on the side of the church, and also windows were smashed so often that we have now put in that stuff that used to be on phone boxes that can't be smashed. We've put them in the windows. It can be burnt with cigarette lighters, but it can't be smashed. And we were having that just constantly, and it was absolutely soul destroying. And a number of conversations at the Kirk session about getting CCTV, and I made the point, what are we going to do once we capture young people on camera? And they said, oh, prosecute them. And I said, well, can we understand a wee bit about who these young people are? And I'm the chaplain in the high school, and the head teacher in the high school had said, if you do get from the community police officer names and you find out who's done it, let me know and I'll deal with that in school. And we did get 3 names eventually. And when I heard the stories of the lives that these 3 young people lived, I felt it was important to share that with the Kirk session. One of these young people was somebody who had a history of self-harm and who tried to take her own life a number of times, and she's 13. And to share that story with the elders started to break down the assumptions that were made. We looked at that bit at the beginning about labels. Young people are hoodlums, vandals, they've got no respect, all of these things. But actually, we then started to make a link with there's a youth project behind us. And they actually told us that on the night that we had some of the worst vandalism, they had put out of the youth project a number of young people for behaving badly, and so they'd come over to the church and done the vandalism. So speaking with the school, I think Joe mentioned nurture groups earlier on. In the high school, there is a nurture base for young people who have different issues at home, different educational issues. Some of the young people are bullied. Some of them have social workers. They're young people who don't manage the normal curriculum, and they do what's called the wider curriculum. And so I started working with the guidance teacher who is in charge of the nurture base, and we started to work with a small group of young people coming over to the church to help out with preparing the lunch for our men's group. A men's group on a Thursday. There's about 14 older men, and mostly men that I've asked to come to who I did their wives' funerals. So it's a group of bereaved older people, and we started that after COVID. And so the young people came to that, and one of the things, when Joe was talking about the solitaire being played earlier, I was thinking about how as adults, sometimes we have to limit ourselves, pretend we don't know how to play solitaire, or pretend we don't know how to make a tin of soup, so that the young people can start to show that they've got skills and resources. And so the youth worker from the school, from the nurture base, comes with 2 or 3 young people now every week to help to do the lunch, and they've totally got it down to a fine art. They put out all the napkins, they set all the cutlery out, you know, they tell you if you've got it wrong, you've not put the cheese out in the right way or whatever. But the other big thing is they ask questions all the time about what's that in there? Is that why is there a cross? What are those books? Why does the clock in the how does the clock in the church work? You know, what is a church? They ask all these questions all the time that strip away a lot of our supposed learning. But the other thing that happens is that these men who come to the men's group, first of all, I had to work at telling them that they weren't there to do work experience, because that's what they all thought. You know, they're here to learn, but actually that they were young people who needed support and care, and that they weren't there to serve them, but they were there to learn social skills, yes, but they were there to be supported as well. And so what happened was the men in that group started to almost become like grandparents to them, the grandparents that some of them don't have. And the lovely thing that's happened now is that when they finish, they're there for an hour and a half, and at 1 o'clock, they've served the lunch at 12 o'clock to the men, and at 1 o'clock it's their lunchtime and they can go. But some of these young people choose to stay over their lunchtime now, and they've learned how to play carpet bowls, and they've learned how to play darts, and you know that's very good for their maths to deduct the score in the darts. And at the end of some of the sessions, I say to the men that come to that group, good youth work today, well done. And they've started to feel a sense of pride that they've got something to offer. And that's been a big change for them, from men who've had to adjust from losing their wives and from losing their own sense of identity and purpose, to feel that they've got something to offer every Thursday, because we've got young people there that need that kind of support. But also the young people, they feel that they've got something to offer because they know how to serve that lunch, they know how to set that out. And we've worked with them on things like, you know, sometimes we have cakes at Easter or whatever. You get yours last because you're there to do the work of serving the lunch, and it's the men's group. So the men get their lunch and you get yours last. So we're teaching them all sorts of different skills and sensitivities. And the other big thing is that these young people that come know the young people who did the vandalism. And what they've started to do is talk about it, talk about the church. And the church has ceased to be a faceless building, because the church is where Walter goes for the men's group, and the church is where Bill and all these other guys go, and they know what happens there. They know that these guys are supported, and they've learned about what their needs are as well. And we've also had in the school holidays now a team from the youth project over the back, who all go to the same school, coming over to do litter picking. They've painted the walls over the vandalism now as a kind of project in the summer holidays. And they, when they were around to do that, they kept saying to me, Gayle, can we come back tomorrow? And is there any other jobs for us to do? Because they just felt so seen and appreciated, and again that sense of purpose. And so I couldn't get rid of them the whole of the February week. They were in the church every day, and they were helping at the cafe. And as they did that, chatting to other people who learned what life is really like for these young people. One woman who comes to my church all the time started speaking to this girl because she said she saw her on the bus that morning and realised that she lived in her street. And they were both coming to the church, and they didn't realise that they were both coming to the church. But once they were in the church and they were chatting, that this woman, they learned each other's names. And this woman said to the girl, oh, I see you all the time. You know, you live across the road from me, and I see your mum quite often. And this girl said, that's not my mum, it's my auntie. I live with my auntie. And you could see this woman in the church just suddenly thinking, oh, this girl lives with her auntie. There's a story there. about what life's been like for this young person. So I think what I've experienced in Newbattle has been about rebuilding reputation of the church, making it not assuming that people know what the church is about and that the church know that people know it's a good place. The young people from the youth project said they were very impressed to hear that the church was a warm bank, for example, because we had registered to do that because of the cost of living crisis, and to make sure that at different activities during the week there were spaces where people could sit and get a heat and something to eat. And the young people from the youth project and from the school said that they were learning about that in school, and that they also wanted to support our New to You shop, which is our clothing recycling, reusing shop where people can get affordable clothes. And they did their own New to You shop over at the youth project, and the things that they didn't swap or sell there, they brought over to the church. So there's lots of different things that are coming now around the relationships that have been built. But the big thing is the vandalism has stopped. And I think that's because we've done something in changing the reputation and the relationship that we have with the community.
What a wonderful story of transformation. Thank you so much, Gayle. And, you know, I think so many of our churches are very small, very elderly, very discouraged, very broken, very vandalized, whatever, and very inward looking. And that's just an amazing story of relationships being built across generations, increased understanding and concern and action between different generations, and all the transformation that can happen in so many different ways. Thank you so much. It's a very, very powerful story and testimony. Andrew, welcome from Christian Aid. And I think you've got another example and opportunity of ways to connect with local communities.
I do, thank you. And just thank you to everyone who's shared their stories this evening. It's felt like a real privilege to be part of this space and just hearing about the different ways that churches are and can connect. So I'm just going to try sharing my screen. It's always that slightly nerve-wracking point where you don't know whether this is going to work or not, but can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. So yeah, hi everyone, I'm Andrew. I'm part of the Christian Aid team here in Scotland. As many of you know, Christian Aid is an international development organisation that was founded by the churches just in the wake of World War II, primarily in response to the refugee crisis. But we've undergone a lot of changes since that initial thing. We no longer have the same name, but we still have the same sort of driving mission, which is the belief that everyone is equal in the sight of God. And to us, that means that there should be the opportunity to experience life in all its fullness. So we're committed to tackling poverty and injustice everywhere, wherever we see it. So in what most of you will be aware of will probably be through Christian Aid Week, where we'll talk about some of our programmatic work in one of the 25 countries that we work with, and the work we do with our partner organisations. I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the work we do here in Scotland, particularly some of our schools and education work, where what we look to do is to work with churches and with schools and young people to enable them to be agents for change in the world, to feel that sense of agency. One of the things that we have been encountering over the last sort of 10, 15 years, as we've increasingly worked on the issue of climate justice, this came about through engagement with our partners, where we were talking to them about eradicating poverty. And one partner famously said, you can forget about making poverty history because climate change is making it permanent. So since that conversation, Christian Aid has been working to sort of increase this as part of our work. As we built this more and more into our schools work, we recognized that this is not only an issue that young people get and are really passionate about, but it's also one that for many of them brings a high level of anxiety, a high level of disempowerment. Young people, you know, they're not in a position where they can vote. Often they feel like their voice is marginalized. They recognize that this is an issue for them and for their generation, but they don't necessarily feel that they can make that change in such a proactive way. So one of the things we've been trying to do is pull together this project called Creative for Climate Justice. So this is a project where we work with a school to help them understand the issue of the climate crisis in its global context. So understanding the stories of some of our partners in the global south and the reality that they're hearing through the climate crisis. And then to enable pupils to explore that issue through the medium of art, to either express how they're feeling about it, what change they want, to express rage or hope, or all these sorts of things, and then to use that artwork to express those emotions to some of the decision makers in their community. So here's a little bit of what it looks like in practice. So this is Muirtown Primary up near Inverness, and they took part in this project last year. So schools are given a resource to help them explore the issue, so they can they'll understand some of the stories, they'll understand some of the science behind it, they'll understand a bit of why, as Christians, organisations like Christian Aid are concerned about this issue. And then they are given a sort of an art facilitation guide, which helps the pupils in the class actually go through the process of sort of understanding their thoughts and feelings around this and how they explore it through the medium of art. And then schools and communities are encouraged to host an exhibition of the artwork and invite politicians, local businesses, local decision makers along to see the art and to have the pupils talk them through, to sort of act as exhibitors for their own artwork. So you suddenly have this situation where not only are the young people understanding the situation and critically appraising it, they're then able to express their thoughts and feelings around this, and then they're able to communicate that to decision makers. So the idea is they go through this journey of suddenly becoming advocates and having a platform and some sort of agency around this. So in the photos here, you can see Muirtown Primary School. This is them meeting their MP, Drew Hendry, who was invited to see the work. What this doesn't show, and I'll get to that in my next wee clip, is we then invite schools to then send the artwork into us, and we have been liaising with politicians to organise exhibitions in Parliament. So this December we had one in Westminster. This coming July we have one coming up in Holyrood, where again we will exhibit these bits of artwork in the national parliaments. We will invite young people to come and speak to the nation's politicians about their concerns and things. Yes. Where I was going to go next with this is to tell you a bit about an example we had with the local church, because obviously I've talked a bit about schools, I've talked a bit about Christian Aid. What's the role of churches and school chaplains in this? Well, I think primarily for us, and I think this has been demonstrated a lot by all the stories we've heard tonight, so much of what churches have is that those connections and that almost that convening power of how do you bring different, very disparate and diverse groups together. And recently we were contacted by some churches in Dunblane who were taking part in something called Dunblane EcoFest. They were an eco congregation. They wanted to take part in this festival within Dunblane, which highlights the different things groups and organisations in Dunblane were doing to further care for God's creation. And they got in touch with us and said, do Christian Aid have an exhibition that we can host to show some of the impact of climate change in the world? And we said, well, we do have that, but have you thought about reaching out to your schools and seeing if they would take part in Creative for Climate Justice and then hosting one of their exhibitions? Because we think that would be A, more impactful, and B, it's beneficial for the church because it creates those sorts of connections that maybe they didn't have. So they said, oh yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And subsequently they've, through the school chaplains that are involved in the churches in the Dunblane area, they've reached out to the local primary schools, the local secondary schools, and said, there's this initiative called Creative for Climate Justice. If you would be willing to do it, we'd be willing to host an exhibition here in Tomlinson as part of EcoFest. And that's what's happening. So the school is taking part. The schools are taking part. They're going to produce the artwork. They're going to then work with the churches to then display that artwork as part of the EcoFest. The church, with our support, are going to get in touch with local councillors, local MSPs, local MPs, and invite them to come along to that. And then eventually we will see if we can take some of that artwork to the exhibition in Holyrood this coming September. So hopefully that gives you a bit of a vision of what this sort of thing could look like, that opportunity for churches to highlight some of the big global issues, some of the opportunity to support young people in navigating what can feel like an overwhelming topic, and some of the potential to give young people in your community a voice and a sense of agency on this issue. So I will post the video in the chat. I'll post a number of links that we also have. And if anyone is interested in exploring this further or would like to know more, then I'll also put my email in the chat, and I'm happy to take questions and pick this up further.
And I will send a follow-up email following this session, and I'll put those links into that email to everybody, including the TLG ones and other things as well. Gosh, we've had quite a variety of different stories, different examples, different ways of building connections, building relationships out into communities. What I'd like to invite people to do is to go into breakout groups just to discuss for a short time in your groups. You may have examples of things that you do that connect and partner and reach out, build relationships into communities that you'd like to share. But I'd also like you just to try and pick out some of the key principles and key things that you've been hearing through those examples that we might be able to dig into and replicate and explore in different contexts. So you've just got 8 minutes in your groups. So fairly quickly, just share an example if you have one of things that you might be doing to build relationships out into the communities, and pick out some of the kind of principles and things that have particularly struck you from the stories that we've heard. Then we'll have a bit of general discussion before we close. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you've had useful conversation. I'm sorry it was so short. We always try to pack so much in, and I think all those examples were so rich and varied. Just wonder if anybody would like to share anything, any other examples or any things that particularly struck them. I was particularly thinking about, we've heard so much about the huge impact on the local community, the impact on our own congregations and people who get involved in doing any of these things, the impact on young people themselves, and the impact on their families. We've heard through all these examples, we've heard of just such rich examples of impact, of value, of connections, of belonging, and sharing God's love. Anybody want to bring any other examples in, or anything that's particularly struck you? We've just got a couple of minutes to have some discussion, so do just unmute and share anything, something that might have come up in your groups, any of the key principles that you've noticed or would like to, or indeed any questions that you want to raise. I think we've had some good comments in the chat as well about some kind of very quotable quotes and things. But that question that Stewart says, what do you need? What would help? And kind of, Gayle just saying, well, let's try and understand this a little bit better. And really, how do we build up understanding and relationships, working together with others, with the school and other members of the church community, how much more we can do. Bringing in other people. It's not all on the minister. It's lots of different people can be involved. There's something that all of us can do in lots of different ways. All of us have relationships in different ways already, and how can we build on those opportunities? Any other things that anybody would like to share? John, I don't know whether that was you waving your hand or wanting to say anything, but if Stewart.
I think the thing for me that I noticed across all of the things was the kind of sense of consistency. That turning up and continuing to turn up matters, in ways that we probably can't even understand. But that kind of consistency, that you can't just do something once and then step back, and when it gets difficult, you have to keep going. Even though that can be really hard, I think for me that was the thing that stood out, across all of those things. But any relationship needs that, doesn't it? It needs effort and consistency.
Andrew?
Yeah, in our group, we talked a little bit about the ability of the church to make those connections, and we talked a bit about what was beautiful about some of the stories that were shared, particularly on Gayle was sharing, is that by the end of it, it was hard to identify who was helped and who was being helped, and it's almost, how do you put the church in the position where it can bring those different people together, create those connections in a way that everyone seems to gain from it, everyone gains in life, and not only are the individuals involved transformed and getting something out of it, but the position of the church and how people understand it is also transformed. I thought that was, if we can crack that, then I think that could be really powerful.
I think it also transformed people's understanding of the church and the minister and relationships in the church, and some of the stereotypes, the labels, the fears were broken down through those relationships, and that sense of belonging and that sense of showing up, that sense of meeting needs, and going back to that video we saw at the beginning, replacing all those other labels with that label, you are loved, we care about you, we want to know you and understand you, we want to be with you, we want to connect with you, and you with us. And surely that is a way of bringing in God's kingdom. Well, I'd like to just close by sharing a song. It's a song that I think was brought out for the prayer movement, Thy Kingdom Come, which runs between Ascension and Pentecost and Ascension. It's just got some really powerful words in it about reaching out into our societies and how we as church, we as Christians can share God's love, and through that we can transform, revive and heal society. So I'd love to just share that as our closing prayer, and as you watch it, just think about all the stories that we've heard about and we've shared this evening, plus all the other stories of people in your own areas and what they're doing as well.
Seek your kingdom throughout every sphere. We long for heaven. failing to scribe your heart on history's page. Make us again what we were made to be. Transform, revive, and heal society. Faithful to govern, ever may we be. Selfless in service, loving constantly. In everything, may your authority transform, revive, and heal society. Transform, revive, and heal society.
So I thought that was an appropriate song for us to finish with and to be encouraged by. And thank you so much, people who've contributed and for attending. And may you continue to explore ways that we can transform, revive, and heal society.